Hello and welcome to this tutorial series. In this tutorial series we take a look on the simple inventory system, which includes also the character stats and the character preview here. So when we pick up these items here, we can see them in the inventory like that. We can use the items, for example this apple or this bread here, to restore some health or some food. And we can of course wear the clothing on the character. So let's go. In this part we will create the inventory itself. For that we will use the advanced interact system, of course, links in the description. So I will not go into much detail for that. Just an blueprint interface, as you can see, with the interact function. And inside our character we have the classic interact function with the tick event, where we get the first person camera, have the line trace, and then check for the interact interface. And then we set a variable, in this case we call it item, where we interact, and we have a little widget, in this case just the little circle that you can see here. Alright, let's start with the inventory. For that we have the enumeration, so right click, blueprint, enumeration. I prepared something, just for example, we have foods, clothing, weapons and other items. This is just for later that we can categorize our items. Then we have the item structure, very important. We have the name as a text, we have the image as the texture 2D, the weight as a float, the amount as an integer, the category as our category enumeration, the mesh as a skeleton mesh, and then we will add up an actor later. So let's create the item itself. For that I already prepared some images, just some pictures of the items that I want to create. So we go right click, blueprint class, actor. And let's call this item. Open this up. So the first thing is we go to the class settings and add our interact interface so that we can pick up the item later, like that. Then we add the static mesh as well as the skeletal mesh. We need the variable called item. This will be our item structure. When we compile and save this, you can see our structure here. And at the end we add another variable called contains as an boolean. We also add up an use item function with an input called index as an integer for later. Let's go back to our inventory folder. So for the item structure here, we will add up a new variable called actor. And this will be an item. This one here as a class reference. So this is our item itself. Next, let's create some items. So we go right click, create child blueprint class. Let's start with the apple. We can fill up the name now and the image. Then a weight for, I don't know, 0.5. The amount is 1. The category is food. And then we can choose the apple itself as an actor. And for the static mesh, we choose the apple. And that's basically it. Let's create some other items. So I skip the process. Let's take a look on the HUD itself. So right click, use interface, widget blueprint here. We have the HUD itself, the HUD item, and the inventory as a widget. Let's take a look on the HUD item. This is just a size box with a size 500 and 100. We have a border as a background, the horizontal box that we can place the items. We have the image, very important, this is a variable. Also the name, the amount, and the weight as a text. So you can see when we have the graph, we have all these as a variable. Next, we have the inventory. The inventory is also just a size box with 500 and 800. Of course, you can play around with the values. We have a border as a background. Choose this brown one here. We have a vertical box. We have a horizontal box for the headline, for the name, the amount, and the weight. And we have a list where we can list our items later. Also very important, this is a variable, so when we take a look, we have only this one variable inside our inventory widget. And at the end, we have the HUD itself. This is just a canvas panel with a background blur that we have a good view on our inventory, and we just add up the inventory widget inside our HUD here. Next, we need the game instance, so let's go back to our level and say right-click, blueprint class, and search for game instance. This one here, and let's call this my instance. Open this up, because this will be the place where we actually store our inventory. So we add a variable called inventory. And this will be our item structure as an array. When we now compile and save this, we have our inventory and we can add up some items here. Like always, we go to the project settings, maps and modes, and be sure that you set the instance that you created on the game instance class. Then let's go back to our inventory widget into the graph, and we add up a custom event called update inventory. At the begin, we take out the list here and say clear children. In this way, we will clear the list from old entries. Then we say get game instance, cast to our my instance, get the inventory, need a for each loop, go through every item. Then we want to create a widget. In this case, our HUD item. For that, let's go back to our HUD item itself and add a variable called index as an integer. Go back to our inventory widget, and we want to set this index to the index that we have from the loop. Then we go from the array element and say break item structure. And now we have all the variables of our item. And then we set just every part. In this case, we get the name, in this case, the item name. We get the item image. We get the item weight. And we get the item amount. For the image, we set the brush from texture. So we connect the image with the texture. And for the rest, we want to set the text. So we have the name. We have the weight. For the weight, we go from the weight, say multiply with the amount. Then we convert this into a string. From the string, we want to append the word, in my case, kilogram. And then we put it to the text. And then we also have the amount. Want to set the text as well. And just put the amount to the text. Like that. And at the end, we just take the list. Want to add a child. in this case, the return value to the content. This is our update inventory function. So we are done with the HUD. We can close everything here. And then we go to our item itself. Go to the event graph, can delete everything inside here, and just double click on the interact. Now we get the game instance, cause to our instance, get the inventory, say for each loop with break. So this is when we actually pick up an item. In this case, we want to break the item structure, take out the item itself, also right click split structure pin. Then we check if the names are equal. Need a branch to ask. Go from the inventory and say set array element on true. On the item we say again split structure pin. We connect the name, the image, the weight, but the amount, of course, we will say add 1. So this is basically when we already have the item in our inventory, we'll just count up the amount. We have the category, the mesh, and the actor. Then we set the contains to true. Go back to the break, like that. And at the end, we take out the contains with a branch on complete. Take out the item. Go again from the inventory and say add, in this case on false. In the case we will destroy the actor since we pick it up. So basically what we do here, when we interact with an item, we pick it up. We check if we already have the item in our inventory. If yes, on true, we will count up the amount. If not, so this means we don't contain this in our inventory, we will just add it to our inventory. And in both cases, of course, we will just destroy the actor because we pick up the item. Compile and save this. The last step is to add all of these to our character. In this case, my third-person character here. So we go to the begin play where we already have the HUD for the interact, but you can ignore this here. We just say create widget. We select our HUD, this one here. Then we say promote to variable. Call this inventory widget. Then we get the inventory and want to update our inventory when we open it. And of course, we just add it to the viewport. Then let's choose a key for open the inventory. Let's choose the classic I for inventory. We need to flip-flop. We take out the inventory widget here and also the get player controller. We want to set it to visible, up here to visible, down here on the B case to hidden. Then we want to set the show mouse cursor up here to true and down here to false. And again, we go from the player controller and want to set the input mode to game and UI only. And down here, we want to set it to set input mode to game only. Like that. So this is our open inventory function. And at the end, we need the interact itself. So let's choose the E key, for example. Of course, you can choose whatever you want. Then we take out the item. Check if it's valid with a question mark. Go from the item and want to interact message with the item. We take out the inventory widget. Get the inventory again. And want to update the inventory when we interact with the item. Compile and save this. Let's see if this works. We go to our items here, place the items inside the world. Like that. Then we hit play. We can press I. You can see our inventory. Press I again to close it. With E, we can interact with the items. The items are disappearing. We press I again, and there we have our items in our inventory. In the next part, we will take a look on the use item function. When we actually use the items, we get some player stats and go on. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please let me know, and yeah, goodbye.